saved a few buses over there.
We were just jabbering.
Yeah, that's,
Thank you, Scott.
yeah, 1502. Roll call, note those, the three of us present, others in attendance, Ethan and Bob and I. And then we're gonna finalize the high school buildings and site plan B, or at least hear what we have to say, so Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Alright, I'm gonna stand up there and walk through this, okay? I know we've set this up to be a 3-hour meeting, done a lot of work to try to make this go, take a first pass for you, and then dive deeper into numbers to see, you know, if we're missing the mark. But I think we're gonna be pretty close, but we may miss the mark in a big way. Alright. I'm gonna turn the lights off, because, alright, I'm gonna walk through, I'm gonna try my best to kinda go through the data and information. We've got, Matthew Hammer here from Ellers. He'll be pulling up some tax information as we go, okay? He's gonna correct me whenever I misspeak of exactly what you can fund or what you can't fund with the authorities you have, okay? Don't be afraid to ask, what don't we get when we do this particular project or whatever, because we've been spending the time focused on what we can do and what we will get done with various funding at spots, but there are areas where, you know, there's things that won't be able to be done, right? Other than the use of general fund dollars. I will tell you, your superintendent has said very distinctly to not drain the general fund here. We're trying, that money is used for teachers and for classrooms, and so we wanna be cognizant and thoughtful about if we're using any general fund money. You know, it's that money that we can't pull from other outside resources, right? So, and again, that makes sense, similar to what we've been doing with other school districts. All right, oh, you're gonna have to click for me. My laser printer, yeah, put that. So we're gonna start, review your priority drivers that were adopted by the school board, right? Put together by this committee, also that utilized previous task force priority drivers. We're gonna go through funding buckets. You'll see my little PowerPoint slide, how we're adding the funding buckets together to fund the overall project. You'll see our first pass. I'm gonna go through a bunch of the slides that were put together by the various experts that you've sat through in your previous meetings as well as the school board. We're not gonna go through them in detail, but for the record, I think we gotta at least have them to talk through what's included, what's not included as part of some of these different options. As we go through the funding buckets and the allowable funding, Matthew can calculate tax impact, provide clarification. And then at the end, we'll kind of, all right, here's our first pass, plan B. Let's pull a spreadsheet up and look at other options if you so desire as a board, to make it your own. Interaction from anyone and all the way through this. So if you got questions or comments, or stop me along the way, okay? Next, let's roll. All right, these are your priority drivers in order. For health and safety items first, infrastructure and physical needs. Let's get some things done that these gentlemen have been waiting for that are beyond repair or beyond useful life. And then security and ADA needs of this facility. Let's tackle those. And we put educational environment next, right? So, you know, maybe is there an educational project or two? How would that look like? What would that look like? But we really didn't go too deep in this. And I can talk about some of the things we talked through. And what you could do, right, if you so desire for your plan B. And then we excluded department specific or community use, technology upgrades of the school, furniture, fixtures, equipment, all that kind of stuff are not included in the plan. All right, again, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the construction challenges with remodeling, right? As we're looking at plan B, this is likely would take 2 summers to do the amount of work that would be required to bring your HVAC systems up to par and up to today's code standards and so on. We gotta work around safety of students and staff. You gotta mobilize over a couple of years a lot of asbestos to be taken out prior to construction coming in, as well as there is a bunch of code things, as Von Dirks brought up from Wold, that come into play as we're looking at this. So do we have everything included in our budgets? Don't know, right? Just be be direct with you, when it comes to remodeling, there's things that may pop up that we didn't have included in the budgets. All right. Spent a lot of time on this, and I know, particularly, Mr. Woods, you talked about, I think we gotta have a 3-year plans, or, maybe we scooch this into 3, and we had looked at, Eller's provided some different funding things on 3-year bonds, or 5-year bonds, or 10-year bonds. That's all still up for discussion and debate. Here's how we looked at it as professionals when we got together to work on this. We looked at it in 5-year increments, right? So not the 3, right? Not the 3, but 5. And as we talked about it, if we went 3, by the time you're getting done with the work, you've now bonded and paid for it, right? Now you're in your last year of bonding, right? Because it's gonna take you years to do the work. You're better off and to have more of a 5-year debt service on this. Those discussions we had with Ellers. Any comments on that, Matt?
Yeah, when we looked at it, we obviously the last time we looked at 3, 5, and 10, but as we look at the plan for the useful life of what you're looking at financing, and then having to come back around and likely finance ongoing projects and plan B for phase 2 and phase 3, it makes sense to just kind of keep that 5-year structure as an ongoing flow when you look at your debt service structure.
I'm confused, why does it make sense?
Yeah.
Well, when we're looking at, I think with the conversation with the ICS around the cycle and that cycle of what typical construction periods look like, and you're continually in the plan, it spreads that the issuance out over that 5-year period, and instead of like a 3 or a 10-year period, 3 is really short when you're considering a construction schedule, and then
If you're talking design plus.
yep,
2
and
years,
then
that's
10
3 to me.
10 is extending it out, and you're starting to add debt service costs over the life that you're gonna have to come subsequently fund ongoing debt service costs, likely in 5 years, and stack on top of the ongoing debt service that you already have there.
All of these needs are well overdue.
Mhm.
So to expand it to 5, 10, 15 we're already 5, 10, 15 years behind.
Correct.
So I just think a 5-year plan is too long. A 3-year plan, design in a year, 2 years of construction, hit it again, and do it again. And
We'll be installing it over 3 years, but we're talking debt service.
I get
over
that,
5.
and I'm not really all that concerned with the debt service, because we're already 5, 10 years behind on the needs of this building.
Yeah.
So to compact it we're still behind.
Right.
To spread it out, we're making even less progress. We're spreading this out even longer. And I get that if this was a viable project of a great building after we're done, that would make more sense. But we're trying to put a bunch of Band-Aids on this to make it work for people in the next 2 or 3 years.
One, if you're in a 3-year structure, but I think the way this plan is set up for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, we were looking at like 5-year cycles. So we were trying to mirror the debt service on that 5-year cycle. So basically when you're starting the next construction cycle, your next debt service cycle would kick in the same way. So if the schedule was accelerated and we could get it done in 3, you could obviously look at a 3-year schedule, but this was a mirror of what we were trying to do to kind of more match what was here.
But I
So.
think, we're looking at a
Mhm.
3-year funding cycle. We're not looking at a 5 years, we don't wanna be paying on a debt and having it, build at 3, then pay for 2 additional years. Say, no, it's every 3 years, there's a build cycle and a fund cycle. That we are looking at 3 years.
Yeah, so let me try to explain. If let's say a referendum fails in May, you proceed forward with design, right? Design for your plan B would take the next 6, 7 months, whatever. You'd be going out to bid in January, February, start your construction in the summer, right? Finish your construction the following summer, right? For your first phase, the way we have it laid out right now, not that we can't change this, by the way. For the first phase, the package of projects, if you will. For the highest priority based on your staff, based on your priority drivers, It might make sense as we continue on, you'll get a sense of.
Well, and I think that, let's continue it, but that, I just wanted to be heard of that, I think
Yeah.
Scott as well,
Yeah.
that this is not the idea coming from the board wasn't to do this over 5 years, or it was
Yeah.
to compact it.
Yeah, so we're looking to get a bunch of things done, right? And so I'll go back to the task force. I think the task force had a repair renovate plan of their priority ones of 21 million for the first phase. We're trying to take your 42 million, break it over to chunks, all right, to the best of our ability. It's at $15 million increments. It's as a starting point, and then we saw how things laid out. So you'll get a chance to see how the numbers total up at the end, and then what we have for different options to. You could move some of this stuff up, right? When we have things like your boilers, you know, your staff and that professional engineer thinks, yeah, you probably get 5 more years out of that boiler system, right? So let's not replace it now, but maybe 5 years from now, we better have it in this package for this area, right? So you're not without boilers, and you don't have funding to cover those boilers if they were to go down, right? But we don't think your boilers need to be in your highest priority, because we think you can get another 5 years out of them or more, right? So it's some of those types of things. We're trying to get your higher priority HVAC needs done now, and then we're gonna wait for some down the road. And we're trying to be cognizant of tax dollars too, and of your general fund dollars, and so as we go through this, it just at least gives you what we were thinking. You gotta have a 40+ year plan on your referendum. What's our 40+ year plan here for this building? And we're not looking at any approving educational stuff till 2030, right? So that, just because I don't think you'll be able to afford to. Right? So, anyway, next. All right, here's my chart. It's blank to start with, but we're gonna build this baby together, right? Matthew's gonna help a little as we go. But click the next one. I'm calling them funding buckets, okay? Trying to keep it really simple. We have 3 funding buckets that actually you have levy authority for, that there's a direct tax impact, okay? Okay, so these funding sources are taxable. What it means though is you're bringing additional dollars into the school district to cover the costs of the needs, right? There's various abatement bonds for parking lots, right? Now I have them being paid for by 5 years, but you could set whatever debt, you could do it 3 years, right? Or you could pay for it over 10 years, or you could do it over 15 years, right? And I called it all facilities bonding. I know that's old language, LTFM bonds, right? So I know but you correct me as I go wrong here, but your health and safety levy bucket is ventilation areas to bring up to ASHRAE code, indoor air quality standards, dehumidification, those sorts of things. And now we have the debt going over the 5 years right now. Again, that could go over 15 years or 20 years, right? That's how we set it up, is in these 5-year chunks. The lease levy is educational space. We can add on, we have authority as a school board, you have authority to add on educational space if you so desire. I'm gonna talk about that, and we struggled with that, right? Plus we have a 15-year lease, okay? So I mean, some of the thoughts we have as we thought about your plan B is, if your referendum doesn't pass and you proceed with a plan B, probably not looking at a referendum for a number of years after, right? For a new high school. And if you did do a 10-year debt, that debt doesn't fall off for 10 years, right? In addition, if we have 15-year leases, because we added on to this building, and 7 years from now, you end up with a new high school, you're still gonna be paying on that lease of a building that you might even be tearing down. So we struggle with this funding bucket and how it might help you or not help you.
And that 15-year term is a term that's set by MDE, is when you're looking at adding additions for educational purposes, they want to see a term of 15 years for the comparison analysis. So that's the minimum requirement that they look at when you're doing building additions. They'll let you get away with a little bit shorter terms if you're looking outside of like turf fields or those types of things that districts are doing.
Okay. So our funding buckets are gonna go in our barrel at the end, okay? Our total funding plan. Okay, next one. All right, you also have authority for LTFM funding. You get about $600,000 now, right? And you've been getting beat up over the years that how can you put more money in this thing? Well, that has ramped up to $600,000, as you know, over the last 3 years. was much, much lower than that till the state changed the funding formula for LTFM. Now, you can pay as you go, which is what you've been doing, using your money as you go, or you can bond against future LTFM dollars coming in. So if you get 600,000 a year, if you want to bond it, all of it over the next 5 years, 600,000 times 5 is 3 million. You don't get the cost of interest as well, but you do 3 million less, just a little less than 3 million with your LTFM funds, using all of your LTFM. But you have saved some. I believe you saved 900,000, have some dollars saved up for roofing and those items.
So we have 900,000 sitting there, so, and we're getting 575,000 right in that bracket. So if you took that over 10 years, but you certainly wouldn't want to invest all of that in the high school, you would want to go half at the most. But then that takes all of your dollars. You don't have any other additional dollars and fix things that maybe break down in 5 years, such as that boiler needs to be replaced or something along those lines.
Yeah, and you're right on the lines of where we were. Maybe spending half of that putting towards this, but saving the other half for repairs that might come up here. And or we still have the whole Trailview site and the needs up there. The needs aren't zero up there, as your maintenance staff will tell you. Okay, the other is your general fund. You can use general fund for most anything, but it is your most prized fund because it goes to paying teachers and, and textbooks and those types of things. But we are gonna find there's things that don't qualify for some of these funding buckets that you really don't have a choice other than taking on a general fund. Okay? Anyway, miss anything, Matthew?
I don't think so.
A few other weird, quirky things that capital facility bonds, but for the most part, it gives you a summary of the tools that you have for this particular building. So when I start putting them all together, we've got our items that add to the taxes and bring in additional funds, and we have those that are funds you already have, right, to work with. Right? Next. All right, weighing your different funds and the priorities. Now, this is where our staff and your team of professionals have been involved. We kind of took a step back and said, if we're parents of 4th grade students sitting in your chairs, looking at the health and safety of our kids coming through this thing, what do we do? What do we do, right? Knowing that you've tried over and over to pass it in a referendum, because that would have been our first choice as parents, but what would we do? How would we, and we had to also, part of our rules was to think through your priority drivers, right? Because I like new science labs. I tell you, as parents, I like new science labs. I'm not sure how you're gonna fund that, right? Just the perspectives that we took, right? Next, let's just go. Your site. You know the site challenges you have, and the biggest site challenge we have is trying to prevent your kids from coming across the busy road. Your superintendent and I just met with the city leadership and inquiring about any chance to close that road and looking for feedback from them. And how do we best address this, okay? Next. When we're looking at abatement bonds, what can we use them for, okay? Abatement bonds are for parking lots. They're limited by tax capacity. I don't think it comes into play here for you. It's board authorized funding. Bonding's the term, how many years out is set by the board. There's a public hearing process as part of this as well, okay? So, and I had an A and a B and a C option. We kind of all kicked the A option out and looked at really the B and C options might make some sense. So this is Vaughn and his staff just taking a first pass. Again, it's not designed yet, but we really, how do you prevent the kids? Well, first off, we got to get rid of the parking here and make this your stormwater area or grassing area. Having your parking lot for your students where your current football practice field is. Creating some sort of parent pickup drop-off loop of some sort. Try to get the parents off of just dropping the kids here. I don't know if that's gonna stop it, right? We gotta really maybe make something even more convenient for parents. But when we get to the design of that, we we're gonna have to do that, right? But try to have your students park here and your new entrance somewhere close by, right? Nice, secure entry of some sort. Then your bus pickup and drop off over on this side with parking lot for additional overflow and your busing. And there's one option with busing, and if you go to the next, there's another option. So otherwise the kids are coming across the parking lot, across a driving lane. Here they're not. You could load some buses here, some here, some special ed buses or whatever. So you can have students not crossing the buses. So trying to address some of the safety challenges of your site with your parking lot, ability for parking lot funding. We mill and overlay some of this, should be event parking or, overflow parking and so on. Could we leave this? We could, but I think people would park there, right? I think we've got to try to discourage people from parking where it's not safe. So, is this perfect? It's not perfect. You're landlocked. You don't have a lot of options. You got the water on the one side, you got homes on the other side, you got busy road in front of the school. But I think it's a decent first pass, right? Could this parking lot be turned and go this way and have athletic space or play space this way, right? Maybe, you could, right? Now you're taking away your football field, right? So your football coach is like, oh my gosh, right? We're gonna talk about football fields in just a little bit, because we took away your practice field. We took away your spot for Phi Ed. So the principals are going, what the heck? No place for Phi Ed, right? Your football coach is not gonna let you do Phi Ed on the game field, right? Now the football team has to travel up to Trailview for practices. Right now they're traveling when you'd rather have it on campus, right? So I don't have all the problems solved, but at least it solves some of your major safety needs. Okay, next. What did I miss? Yeah, improved access to your secure entry, improved handicap accessible parking would be part of that. Let's put some bollards in. So one of the things that in your Homeland Security report is it'd be easy just to drive right into crash into your school, right? There's no bollards that are in the way, to make that difficult. That would be part, and addresses your deferred maintenance needs of your parking lots as well. And some stormwater management. If you remember, there was some stormwater management things that had to be done at your tennis court project, right? Because codes have changed since your facility's been built. Okay, so your funding bucket. If I add all the cost of your parking lot stuff, I have option 3. We're about $2.4 million. Okay? So now it's work for you. 2.4 million abatement bonds over 4 years. Tax impact. You guys look at it,
Yeah.
Kevin, because I don't have.
On 100,000?
On 100, I just went with 100.
$42 a year.
$42 a year. So you plug 42 in there, Kevin. So we'll build this as we go. So you get a chance to see what the tax impact is, do comparisons on the referendum, those types of things. Okay. All right, $42, and that'd be an annual tax impact. Okay. All right, now into the next one, in the next funding bucket. Questions on abatement bonds, I guess, before I move on.
Is there a limit on those? You said net tax capacity, et cetera, that 2.4, is that the amount for what you showed for work there, or is that the maximum that you can go?
No,
or
that's the amount I showed for work there. I also included safety lighting, which is allowable under that, stormwater management, allowable for that. So that's all of that stuff included in the bollards. Fencing, I don't have fencing in there. I don't have fencing in there.
But the 2.4 was, it does not have to be over the 5 years, it could be over a 3 year.
It could be
So
over
it's
3
not-
years.
It's not a.
It
per
could
year
be over 10
calculation.
years,
Okay.
right? So yeah, keep that in mind, and we can look to change that if you want.
What types of things cannot be? You mentioned fencing. Can fencing?
Fencing can be,
It can.
if it's associated with a parking lot.
Okay.
And, it's really a parking lot. Well, yeah.
So
Matthew, we
lighting,
can
water, fencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess what else would there be in a parking lot?
Yeah, it's pretty much.
Drainage, lighting can be included, so. But
Yeah,
it's limited to the parking structure, the essence of what you're doing with the parking lot, so.
and
Stormwater.
a fairly new funding source for schools. About 8 years ago, I think, was the first abatement bonding project for schools in Minnesota, right? You could also use it for, we talked about this for event parking up at Trailview, right? You don't have parking up there, you could use it for that. Well, we're not trying to solve Trailview here today, we're trying to solve your plan B, right? Right, if you're moving your game field up there, that'd be different, maybe you need to add that to your abatement bonding project, right? Anyway, so we didn't include that in. Okay, other questions?
I got one for you. Is it possible to go back to the slide showing the site?
Yep.
Starting on to the right of the football fields, to the right of the baseball diamond.
Yep.
If we were to come in there with the bus drop-off lane and bring it all the way around, so you'd go over the north, because we don't use the track anyways. And it would take some things to make the bus drop off, yeah,
Like
just
that?
like that.
It's doable.
Yeah.
It's definitely doable.
Yeah.
This could be a parent pickup drop-off loop, but now we gotta add, we got our
Yeah.
entry here, if it's ADA,
Yeah.
we could do that, right? So it's not a bad option. Our cost is, and we had a bunch of these, right? Our cost is probably about 2.4, we gotta add a little for fencing, 2.5. We're in the ballpark, right? That's not a bad idea.
I was looking at it as far as, if you got kids parking coming and going under there, and the buses coming, in around there, and you have other sites, you also need for teachers and other things too, so.
And any sort of parent pickup loop
Yeah.
that we can make super easy, super convenient.
Yeah.
Parents are, usually on a rush to go to work, dropping their kids off. They're typically the most, dangerous situation for kids, to be honest. Teach bus drivers where to go, right? Okay. All right, so indoor air quality use. LTFM is allowable to bring your systems up to code, ASHRAE code. So a lot of school facilities were built before ASHRAE standards came into play. A lot's been learned about fresh air and ability of students to learn and get sick, and a lot's been learned about mold growth in schools, and drying that air out helps prevent mold from growing in schools. So there's funding available for school districts to do indoor air quality projects, as you know, right? You've held off on doing this. You've been trying to be, fiscally responsible to taxpayers as you've been looking to build, what might be a new school instead of putting that money in here. You are getting to the point, and again, you saw the reports of the professionals that walk through here and spend time with your staff. You can't hold her together much more on a lot of the systems that you have, getting parts and pieces for. Building controls these guys, they don't control this building, right? So there's some real needs here, and this is one of your biggest health and safety related needs. You can, if you're gonna put new ductwork in, we have to build new soffits, because these buildings weren't built to shoehorn future ductwork in, right? We have a lot of piping runs to put hot water piping loops in and around the building, and the work associated with that, if it's for sound deadening, if it's to bring your systems up to code, is allowable on your funding. There really is no limit, it's based on the total need you have, but it has to qualify for the state's funding. And the term is set by the board. Again, you can bond it over 3 years, you can bond it over 20 years. MD has to approve the narrative write-up associated with this, and we do a lot of health and safety projects for schools. All right, your boilers, if you remember, don't need to be done, right? So, we're keeping your steam boilers, we're putting in, if we move forward this, converters, hot water converters for all the systems we put in, so that 5 years from now, if you do the boiler project, you'd be able to put in a hot water boiler system instead of steam. Hot water would be more efficient, and less maintenance to have a hot water system in your school versus steam. So trying to think ahead of on all of that. Again, your average age of your equipment's 41 years. Look at the ASHRAE life cycle chart. I don't think there's anything with a 40 in it. Might not be anything with a 30 in it, right? And that's your average age equipment. So this truly is a need for you and your community. All right, I'm not gonna give you Cole Carlson's full report. You know, but the hashed-in areas are included in what we've put together for his priority ones, I guess we call them. So this area, and dehumidification, and all right, and then this area, your locker room areas, right? This is, we'll come back to this baby that's dropping into the ground, into the concrete, till we got an idea how, maybe if we're gonna tackle something, how we can do a few things at once for efficiencies. Your welding hood, your dust collector, if you remember, that's a big issue in getting that completed and done. Next, your choir and music areas, right? Addressing some of the needs of the equipment associated there. Cafeteria area, again, served by 2 different units, right? Getting that so it's under one system and operating property of the building or the room we're in today, and others with old unit ventilators or little to no ventilation. Your fax labs and special ed spaces and so on, okay, are included. You got some offices and areas with little to no exhaust and no fresh air, makeup air going into spaces. And some old piping, and you know, and all your piping can be covered under health and safety under this funding source, right? Your domestic water, no, right? But the heating loops to go out for the ventilation units would be allowable use, right? So there is certain parts that are allowable, certain parts that aren't. You know, as we looked at Cole's report as priority 1s, and his priority 2s were essentially the classroom areas. How do you not do the classroom areas, right? Especially when you look at the IEA indoor air quality report. So we got the priority 1s and the priority 2s. You know, a lot of the 3rd floor, 4th floor areas, 1935 section of the building is now included. So 75% of your school would have proper ASHRAE ventilation code, okay? That's kind of what it's been budgeted. Okay, next. Your total cost for that is about 10.5 million. So, now you gotta do your math again, 10.5 over a 5-year debt schedule.
About $190.
190 bucks, Kevin. We didn't have this, obviously we didn't have this done beforehand. I know we're close, kinda. Okay. All right. So 190 bucks. You can add those 2 together, you're at what?
232.
222. Okay.
32.
232?
Yeah.
230. All right. Moving on. All right, lease levy. If I was an educator in the room, I'd say I'm excited about talking about lease levy and putting educational spaces, making our educational spaces better for our school. Let's add some spaces that we need desperately, right? And you can see your educational spaces from your educational adequacy chart. There's a lot of areas that don't meet today's size standards for classrooms, right? Science in 7th grade is an example, right? So we have some areas that you really could use. You do get $212 a pupil unit. And you could do, I put down guesstimate of about 3 million in lease levy authority.
Yeah, it's close to there. It's about 2.7, I think.
2.7. So I took a stab at it, right? About 3 million maybe in additions that you could do to make this school better, right? So next, if you remember, Vaughn has had a slide of some of the specifics, right? 7th grade science, ag space is too small, your fax labs are too small, plus they don't meet ADA, right? And then just some of the just different other areas that if you were gonna maybe prioritize some of those things that you would maybe try to do, right? All right, so then I said, well, we were looking at, God, you add on over here, what's a minimal thing we'd maybe do for educational space? Well, here's one of the minimal things. If you remember in the ADA report, if you're a handicapped student and you wanted to take shop, there's no way for them to get to shop. Right? By law, you have to allow that. You'd be forced to do this if as a handicapped student that wanted their child to be able to take the auto shop. And they can't run the wheelchair all the way around the building in winter or whenever to go into the shop area, right? And you have some steps that go up and in there. So at the same time, you could use more space for the auto shop. So Vaughn did kind of a simple little drawing. I said if we're doing that, figure out how they get up, like maybe a little lift, try to come up cheap, not a big elevator, and put like a little ramp lift thing or whatever, right? So you'd have some accessibility into this shop and expand the shop a little bit. At the same time, we'd have to infill these stairs and whatever, fill this up or make it work, right? We gotta have another entrance in here, we're missing an entrance, right, and an egress. Boy, if you're gonna do this, boy, I'd look at your ag shop and make that bigger at the same time, right? But then we sat and went, okay, just to do this is about $550,000, including the lift, and again, we gotta add more power into your building for elevators and things like that. You remember this is the exit that has that little heater over there that's dripping water into the ground, right? It's stuck in concrete. You chisel all that out and try to get back to the piping and maybe fix that at the same time. I don't know, right? Then start getting excited about, yeah, man, make some ag space and this would be great. And then we start asking these questions. Geez, do you do 550,000 in lease levy? Do you do more? Do you start adding the ag space? Do you add a new space for the science 7th grade? Do you make the fax room big enough? Where do you start? Where do you stop? Right? You're gonna bond it over 15 years, okay? I think we're doing Plan B. Eventually, you're gonna go for high school again someday. 5 years maybe from now, try again. 3 years maybe, try again. Maybe, I don't know. But boy, it's hard to have debt service out for 15 years for part of a building you might tear down, right? You probably tear it down. Doesn't qualify for state aid, doesn't qualify for ag to school credit, am I right? Arnold?
Doesn't qualify for ag to school.
So it just, piles on to the taxpayers, right? So I put 0 in. I put 0 in, and I think I put a question mark. But I put a question mark. I didn't put anything in there. Apologize to the educators in the room, I didn't put anything in there, right? I don't know, right? You put up 3 million and stuff, and there's plenty of things we could be doing. It just doesn't make sense, right? What's the debt service end up being? If we did. If you spread the 550,000 over 15 years, it's not a big debt service, right? Schools use this all the time, and a lot of schools are adding early childhood using lease levy authority. They're adding on some elementary classrooms because they've grown. Are they adding some new common space or some tech ed lab to their high school or something? I don't know if it makes sense to add it to this building, to be honest. Again, I'm gonna come back to it, but just so you know, the thinking, the logic, the reasonableness we took to this. Okay? All right, next. LTFM and the LTFM, what can you use LTFM for? It's a like-for-like replacement. That's for infrastructure needs. ADA improvements are covered and allowable under LTFM. Your roofing, your tuck pointing, your windows, your flooring, your cabinetry, your lighting replacements, piping, all those types of things, replacing sidewalks, and those types of things. You're limited to about $600,000 a year. I don't know what the exact number is. You might.
Yeah, that's your per pupil amount. It was about $650 last year.
$650, so it's probably I'm a little light. Okay, 600. And again, it's gone up. You guys get beat up. They haven't been taking care of this. That you didn't have that in the past, right? That I think it's important for people to know that, and you can borrow against that, right? So you can, do that over 6. So we talked about that already. The amount you receive is also based on the age of the building. So again, our team and Eller's assisting on this as well, talked about, you could take care of all of these windows at one time, get them all done now, pay for it over 15 years on your LTFM or something, right? But now you got 15-year debt on a building you might not have 7 years or 5 years from now, right? Plus, the LTFM funding formula is based on age of square footage, so you get extra money, you get 600,000 because you have an old building. But if you have a brand new high school, this funding goes down to 200 and some thousand, okay? So you could really cripple future boards if you borrow this over 15 years, and in 5 years from now, they pass a new high school. You know, we got debt service, how are we gonna make that payments? We have to do it out of the general fund. So we're trying to be thoughtful on how you use this, and you don't back future boards in a corner, right? All right. A lot of ADA needs you have. Let's keep going. Bathrooms, you don't have an ADA bathroom. We've got to have an ADA bathroom as part of this, so we've included that in the plan. We need to look at ADA kitchen station and science area. We have to do some improvements to your main entrance over there on the far side, your ADA entrance, as well as signage, right? So we really should be looking at, if we're looking at a new secure entry, having some ADA at this new secure entry, right? Keep going, Kevin. But one of the things, if you remember, she put some priorities 1, 2, 3, and 4. The lower costs were 1 and 2. The bigger items were 3 and 4. And you remember Vaughn and her both talked about when you do a bigger project, the state can make you do up to 20% of your project. They can force you to do ADA. Okay, we have priority 1 and priority 2 items included in the budgets that we put together for your LTFM. I can't guarantee they're not gonna make you do priority 3s and 4s if we're moving forward with Plan B, right? We gotta submit for state plan review, see what they bring back to us, right? But we are taking some big steps forward on ADA as part of Plan B and what we put together for the budget, okay? All right, there's a lot of LTFM needs here. We can't get them all done when we're looking at a 5-year plan. But you've got a lot of it, from cabinetry to flooring, to tuck pointing the windows. I think all your windows here are original, as you know. Entry doors, penetrations, those types of things. Your roofing areas, you have got a lot of your roofing done, as you know. Green's good. Red areas, we have the red areas included in Plan B, about $900,000, and including that particular wall. If you remember, the Garland folks talked about that wall being a potential problem.
I missed
Yes,
that.
sir.
I missed that meeting. What is the timeline on the roofs remaining as far as?
On the remaining roofs, if you go back one, Kevin.
Those have all been done recently?
These have all been done fairly recently. So if you go back to our phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 3 and 4, your roofs are coming again, right? But not we're gonna get this part done in phase 1. Phase 2, I don't think you need roofs.
So phase 1 includes all the red, which you
Yes,
think are all
correct.
needed in the next 5
Yeah.
years?
That's what it was.
So you'd be in pretty good shape with
It was
roofs.
2008 is when they started working with us, so all the roofs have been from '08 till now, so different versions. So some would be coming up, if they're 20-year roofs, they're coming up, and then,
Yeah, you're gonna have to do them again,
But not
right?
in the next 3 or 4 years.
yeah, they're not next, other than those.
We-
Yeah, these are.
We thought about how would we ever literally physically plan each of the 5-year increments? Well, you can't physically do that right now, right? But we can kind of think through that. If we go back to that slide, you can kind of see how we thought through those things. But great question. And keep going, Kevin, keep going, some of the needs. Brick tuck pointing. There's a lot of tuck pointing of the building. When we looked at some of this, you did do that wall, right? Last time you did your roofing, okay? So your roofing, keep going. All right, and this is where we got into math of LTFM, right? These guys incurred saying, hey, don't spend it all, don't take it all. We got other needs that are gonna come up, right? How do we think through that? You got about $1 million saved up, I'm a little off, 900,000 maybe saved up. If you committed about 50% of it toward Plan B, that'd be about 300,000 times 5 years, about 1.5 million, okay? I don't know, about 2.5 million of deferred maintenance needs towards Plan B. Okay? So then we kind of tried going shopping. What would you do? Well, roof first, right? We've got some galvanized piping we gotta change out. We couldn't afford to put it all in, right? So you're trying to get rid of some of the lead in the water from the health and safety perspective, right? What else do we have in there, Cal?
We'll put carpeting and flooring.
Some carpeting and flooring, a meaty area, some carpeting down there, a little bit of flooring, like 10 classrooms or something. Some building envelopes, some windows, some duct pointing. It's not all, I mean, we have to sit down and really prioritize and try to figure out which section's the worst, and it's part of the design and planning processes, right? Okay, next. So, what we have totaled up was about 2.7. So I'm a little aggressive on that, my last math slide, based on what we have in here, right? And again, that's, if you bond it over 5 years, it would use the 900,000 you have saved up. What's the tax impact?
0.
0. You know the tax impact of that, because you already have it, they're already coming in, right? So, you're spending it, right, just 0 tax impact. All right, let's go to the next one. Questions on LTFM?
Is that a minimum of 5 years to do that over?
No,
Okay.
it's not a minimum, so you can pick whatever term in that case you want to. So, they don't like to see extended terms for super extended terms, just because the useful life of the asset is, you don't want to exceed that, but 5-10 year term is typical, so.
All right, secure entry, and this was mine and Von's our first conversation. Is like, okay, we're gonna do this right. This is what I think we ought to be doing, right? You're gonna add on to your building, and you're gonna have your office right next to your entrance. So that means you're gonna add an office, your office area. So your high school principals, they can physically see who's coming and going in our school. There's somebody that's checking somebody in, right, as you're coming in. They don't allow somebody in the building, right, unless they should be in this building, right? A lot of times you'd be giving them your driver's license. They aren't letting you in if your driver's license says you shouldn't have authorization as well. And then you really ought to have if this is your new entrance, really should be ADA accessible. You really ought to have an elevator, a full working elevator, right at your main entrance. People could get to the floor that they need. Now, all your floors aren't connected here or here. I don't know. But you really ought to have that, right? Boy, if we move the high school office space out here and build new up, that frees up some of the office space, and maybe that might be a good spot for science, 7th grade science over here. Maybe we make the fax room the right size, or, you know, get the snowball effect of trying to address some of your educational things, right? If we're going to really do this secure entry right. Now, and after we sat and did that, and we get into, well, how are we funding this? It's not educational space.
Can't use lease.
Matt and Greg Crow, you can't use lease levy. So, well, maybe we petition to the MD, right? You know, it's like, Greg goes, no, that's the reason they gave those grants out, right? $500,000 cracks for safe secure entries there's zillions of requests across the state, right? But they denied using lease levy authority for that, right? Now, could that change this legislative cycle? I don't know, right? So then we went, if it's coming out of general fund, back to your superintendent, keep this general fund, preserve it, right? All right, Vaughn, what's the bare minimum you could do? You had 2 different options where you come into the building. Now, it wouldn't be a full, you know, we can't do it with the main entries you currently have, because if we took your main entry away, that's your main egress, for fire, martial reasons and all those types of things. So we can't take it away. We could add on, something to both either the office or the main office or the main district office or the office area. And we'd have a lift, and the lift would bring you up to, again, not an elevator, but a lift that would, we're trying to go on the cheap here, right? But you'd come in and instead of the doorbell, you'd go up and you'd go into the office, and then they would decide whether or not you should be granted access to the school, right? Not ideal, not perfect. I don't know what's gonna mess up the office area in either the district office, or the main office, but try to do it as cheap as we could. This was about $350,000 for either option.
And you're not proposing running
Thoughts?
every person through there, you're proposing that as a handicap entrance.
Yeah, and we're
Well,
proposing your main entrance,
no,
and
that's
buses
a
drop
secure
kids
entrance.
off, they come into school, then we have lockdown, right? And kind of the way you're using your doorbell system sort of now, but a little more, better controlled access than that, right? You physically have to go into the office. Right now, if they have doorbell, I ring the doorbell and they let me in,
You're in.
I got free access to the building, right? Here, at least you have to go check in at the office, and they have to physically allow you to pass through that door.
While students are in the building, right, that's what we're talking about. Okay.
What's that?
While students are in the building.
While students are in the building, right? Better if it's your main entrance, really, and it's a, you've seen examples in other schools and even up at your Trailview, but, that's our bare minimum solution for you, right? We also understand if we have this great big addition, all new office areas and great glass right here by the entrance, boy, this baby looks great. And you put all this money into this big addition, I just don't know if that's the direction the board wants to go. So, bare minimum general fund, keep in mind there may be some things in the ventilation project that don't qualify, replacing some cabinetry as part of that project, for example, or some other areas that might have to dip into the general fund when you're doing your bigger remodeling project, but this is what we plug in. Okay, Kevin? Well, promised the football coach that I would talk about what this does to him. And he was the first to say, hey, I get it. We gotta stop this problem, right? And I get it that's probably, my practice field's probably the right parking thing to take that problem away. But boy, you're killing me. I got no place to practice football, and then we gotta drive up to Trailview. I can't have the teachers and the staff using Phi-Ed space on the football field, or the football field's gonna, not be ready for game days. So what are they gonna play all the way over here, through here, right? Now, he'd tell you, you do plan B, you really should turf this field. Put a turf in. $1.2 million, turf the field. You could use at least levy authority to do that. And talking with your educators, oh good God. The whole long-range plan is to try to move up to Trailview, get all our kids on one campus. Why would we turf a field here when we really are trying to move all to one campus? So I don't have that answer. I didn't put a turf field in. But I promise I'd bring this forward, right?
You can lease levy turf, but you can't lease levy a secure entrance.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the
It's
turf.
all-
You
it's
say
all
that like it
it's
makes
all
sense.
instructional. It's related to the educational purpose piece.
Saving lives playing on a football field.
I don't disagree.
Okay, you just agreed to it so quickly.
Yeah. We're not the legislature, we play by the rules,
Right.
right? They follow the rules that give it to us.
Can a turf field be moved?
What's that?
Can a turf field be moved, lifted from one spot to
Not
another?
really, no, not really, no. No. But then you would use this, you know, Brainerd schools use lease levy to build their turf field. There's plenty of other schools that have, when it's adjacent to their site, right, they use it for education purposes. Now it's not, it's used for phy ed, it's used for band, it's used for country band, all kinds of different
Co-curricular.
things, right? Egg drops with science and all kinds of stuff, right? One of the questions, well, could we include the turf field up at the other side, Trailview? No, I'd say no. It's not for education purposes up there, we don't have a high school up there. So, right, so you could, if you needed it for Trailview Elementary, then maybe you could, right? Yeah, right, so, I told him I thought this is a long shot, because boy, now you're really gonna make this look great from the road, by the way. You know, if people, if they really truly, you know, vote down your high school, and maybe that's what they want. Start putting money into this facility and start, you know, I don't know that. Your community does. But I promise I'd bring it up. You know, we could turn it sideways, parking lot, put a field back here, but it's a lot of cost to redo a football field. Am I gonna have that be the game field? Maybe not. We can move bleachers, some of the lights that you just put up, but those things can be moved, right? The press box, stuff like that. Okay. So there's your funding buckets. I got them all the way across the top. Your first pass plan B, it adds up to about 16.5. That's our tax impact again. Plug them in. Those are 232.
232.
How's that compared to the referendum tax?
It's about lines up with that.
About the same as the referendum. So, yeah, 232.
It was 190.
Yeah, 190, yep. And I didn't put down what don't you get, right? I didn't, but you know, one, you don't get, so 25% of the HVAC systems, you know, don't meet code, right? So areas that we didn't include, you know, hallways and maybe some of the gyms and auditorium spaces or whatever.
Did you not include those because of time that they could be done in two? Because that's one of those.
Yeah, we could move those up into this, right? And this could be, whatever, 13.5 million, and you could do it all here.
It would just seem if we're gonna do them by 75%.
Yeah, I was just trying to be
Sure.
thrifty.
I was wondering if it was a time thing.
Yeah.
If you couldn't be done in two summers.
And we try to take it, because of the time, the days we spent walking around, we looked at what are the biggest priority needs, right? What are the biggest areas of need? And then the classrooms, right? So that's how we got it. Other thoughts,
So
Kevin?
some of the third level areas are like gyms, the auditorium, which is gonna need some good cooling adding to the auditorium. So those are one spaces that, if you can wait on things, those are spaces that you could wait.
Less direct impact for students. They're not in those spaces, you know. The areas we're getting, they're probably in 80-90% of their day at school, right? Trying to, so yeah, try to be fiscally conservative on that. Most school districts would do all their HVAC at one time. Right, let's get it all done, you know. Or if there's some stuff that's really new that, you know, isn't coming through yet, let's hold off on that. But, you know, yours is really all there, so that's got.
Something Cole had talked about that I had noted down before and made sure to write down now too is for the polluted system, if we put in new for HVAC, why wouldn't we put in all new now, including, if my memory serves, the boilers were put in 95, so they're at 25 years right now. If I remember reading that somewhere, you know, in the past, I mean, we're kind of already, they're past their, you know, we've already used up that, and obviously this isn't gonna get done overnight, but if we were to do that, and then also the rest of the ventilation system, That's kinda, that same thing of, if you're gonna put pollutants back in the system, I know that was something we brought up and he had talked about.
Yeah, well, and your boilers are another million or something, $1.2 million, or I don't know what it was. But boilers aren't gonna qualify under this bucket, because it's a heating thing, it's not a ventilation air quality thing. It's gonna have to come out of your LTFM, right? Now so we could,
Yeah.
but in that case, we're better off them having some LTFM to fix them if they break down. I
We'll
don't,
spend everything we've got.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
and
know.
that, and that 2.7 is assuming over a 5-year
5-year
period.
period.
So
That was-
the
that
more
was in
the
the-
more we put in there, it shrinks the annual piece,
Mhm.
so.
yeah, I'm tracking with you. I mean,
Yeah, but my next question then is, out of all those numbers, the only one that would change it when we drop it to a 3-year plan, 'cause that's gonna be my next question, is what's the tax impact over 3 years on the first two columns? The long-term facility maintenance, if we did that over 3 years, that would put us at 1.9 instead of 2.7.
yeah, then we gotta take some stuff off.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Like no windows,
Yep.
no
And that could be
flooring.
in that next, because this is only step one, the next one's gonna start 3 years from now.
Yeah.
And we know it's gonna, be out there. And then also, then the other number would be, you'd drop it from 16.5 to a 15.7, total number, but,
So what would you be
yeah, what would those two numbers
over
be?
3 years?
Well, we ran 11 last time, or a couple times ago.
Did you change your
and,
tax
um,
capacity that's in,
Yeah, it's
right?
about $325 at that time for getting 11 million, so on a 3-year term, or 3-year term, so number to get this would be obviously higher than that.
I was at roughly 140 to 345 in my head.
And we can obviously get that number, so.
Yeah, you've changed to 4-year, or something too. I mean,
We certainly realize these are big numbers, but it's also for us to have gotten to this position in our minds as a board to say, this is stuff that has to get done. And, us as a board to say, yeah, these are things, there's a cost for us to stay here, and it's a big cost. And this is only step one, there's gonna be step 2, which is gonna be similar type numbers again. And then step 3, similar type numbers again. And step 4, similar,
Yeah, and I agree with Scott, I think 5 years is just stretching it out
Yeah.
too long. 3, 4 is going to address some of these things more quickly if that's the direction we have to go.
yeah, because you have the ability to start again
Right.
quicker.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe. It's hard for me to argue that with you. It's not easy. This isn't easy. Go through a few more slides just to see if there's anything else I missed, Ken. Your key dates would be the 27th, right, for final board action. What else? And that's all I have. One thing we can do is show you our spreadsheet breakdown, and you can see where we have some picking and choosing of some things, right? So, just so you know, I want you to have flexibility to edit this thing and make it your own, right? Try to take first pass at it and see how we doing, right? But then we can really kind of muck into this a little bit more, so. Between Kevin and Matthew, they got all the answers. Kevin, you wanna plug in your, you want me to just try to describe it?
Let's see if I can get it up here.
Alright, so one thing as he's setting up the screens and going to the top, but you'll see this column over here on the far left, when there's an X there, it's included in Plan B for now, right? If there's no X, it's not included, right? So you start with your ventilation and indoor air quality, 75% of the building, there's your cost. The next phase would be your priority 3s, would be another 1.5 million, and then priority 4s is another 830, right? So we could include that, X that in. And then we have the various funding columns that are applicable, so that they automatically calculate into the right funding bucket, so that Matthew can give us numbers, right? So. You gotta make her a little smaller, Kev. And shift over one.
Yeah, there's more left.
You go one more cell over?
Yep,
Let's see
there
the
you
axis.
go.
There we go. Alright. So, if we start up the top, I'll just show you what's in and what's not. You know, we got asbestos remediation at about 250,000. I don't know. Asbestos person's coming through next week, maybe she can get us better guesstimate. Distribution piping for the indoor air quality improvements, fire sprinklers. Again, we have fire sprinkler in this number, but we don't for these two, right? Well, by code, you're probably gonna have to sprinkle the building, right?
And so sprinkling the building is in this?
Is included in this.
Okay, the
Yeah.
entire building.
Yep. Recommissioning of priorities 3 and 4 should help these guys out. At least you're getting some look at the systems that you have. You know, 75% of the building would have better controls too, right here. Have to see what they're dealing with today. Upgrade the rest of the automation system we don't have included. So priority 3s and 4 areas we don't. Okay, keep going, Kev. Your roofing areas, we did 15-year roof for the building committee, right? So those roofs will be due in, 15 years in the next phase too, along with when the rest of the roofs will be starting to come due, right? Window and door replacements, there's just a lot. We just picked a first batch of windows and doors, and same thing with brick repair. And then electrical panels, you're gonna need some panels for indoor air quality. You're bringing in bigger ventilation equipment and cooling units. And then your ADA, if we're putting some lifts in somewhere, you need to bring in the power in order for those lifts. And all your electrical systems there. There's maintenance needs. There's some other panels that really should be upgraded we don't have included. Heating plant, there's your new boiler plant we don't have included, but we do have a partial allotment of your galvanized piping to be changed out in the building. Try our best to budget this stuff, not knowing what's behind it. A lot of this is behind walls, and are you chiseling in, and is there asbestos and stuff or not, stuff like that. A little bit of carpeting of some flooring areas. And then your parking lot stuff, right? Your option B, your option C, lights. And we went with option C, which is a little, $70,000 more. ADA, controlled entrance. We really did a nice controlled entrance addition. It's 1.1 million. But we scaled that way back, right, as we talked about. Some ADA stuff for restrooms. Restrooms, you really got to tear in a whole restroom and really widen things out, redo plumbing and all that. And then locker room improvements for ADA as well. Pretty spendy stuff. Start tearing into those parts of the building. We don't have all priority 3s and 4s in, right? Those are numbers from the JQP people that you might be forced to do. Don't have it included, right? Those are big numbers. Auto shop, I did have the auto shop included for ADA. Do I have that in for lease levy? Or did I not? Okay. I think I have that in, so there would be a little bit of a tax impact to that. So I have $550,000 lease levy.
Oh, yeah.
So there'd be a tax impact for that, but it wouldn't be huge. Yeah, and you can see how things break out, right? So there is a $556,000 lease levy project I have in here.
16.
What's that?
There's 16 million still.
Yeah. So, is that helpful? Or confuse you even more? Kev, can you go back to my 5-year increment slide, right? Sorry. So I think that's a big key component to this. If you're talking 3 years or 4 years or 5-year debt schedules, it's a big difference. And a big difference in scope of work. Or if you wanna do all your HVAC at one time, it does change things in a pretty big way. But I think that concept is pretty much a key driver for the rest of this discussion.
And that's a fluid timeline though, too. I mean, if we do the first one over 3 years, and then when that comes due, we can look at, can we do the next one over 5, or do 4? Or how did that work? Was that enough time? Was it not enough time? We don't have to plan things out in 5-year chunks,
No,
or 3-year chunks.
Yeah, you could do it over 3. I mean, you certainly could, right?
It just comes with a tax impact.
All the way up to my third slide or fourth slide.
Is by putting it out 5 years, you're pushing off again?
Well, I mean, one of the things,
Well, now they're pushing it about 5 years, but you're
Yeah, go down one.
diluting those funds out 5 years. We're 10, 15 years behind on things here. So if you're pushing out 5 years, those things that we're still behind in the list are not happening for another 5 years.
yeah,
Based on the strategy, some of them are never gonna be done.
I'm gonna let you guys talk through
On the
it.
strategy, I mean,
I don't have an easy answer
2035
to it.
before.
You know, and one of the things that, when we were thinking about it, it might just feel like you're piling on the taxpayers. You know, oh my gosh, doing over 3 years. I don't know.
But we haven't done these things. I mean, through the course of what we're hearing is, why don't you fix it? Why don't you fix it? But we hadn't increased taxes over the course of how many years to do these things with the concept of moving to a different site and having the least tax impact for the biggest buck. We've gotten beaten down on that. So now it's time to just fix it, and we're well behind. So to do it over 3 years, we have to do that. At least the beginning part, the plan B, phase 1 has to be done over 3 years.
It was certainly the consensus we did vote last time, and that was consensus of the board. We were looking at 3 years. And we understand we're taxpayers too. And
Yeah.
we're right there. We understand that there is a cost. And we've
I
felt
don't
the
want
cost
this.
all along to us as taxpayers, saying this is why building new makes a whole lot more sense than doing this, because this costs money, and it costs a lot of money. You know, the other one costs a lot of money too, but it's less, it's more controllable, you know, and.
Fits a long-term plan.
Yeah, yeah. So, we were definitely, looking at 3 years.
Can you go back to that slide that has the buckets in it?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta go all the way down, I think, to where
Yeah.
the final numbers are at.
Yeah, where the final numbers are at. So that, as we constrict that LTFM bucket, which is the smaller bucket, obviously, that 2.7, that's gonna actually reduce that number. So,
And
when we look at the projects as a whole, like right now, this was a plan for 16 million. That 2.7 wasn't having a tax impact. This roughly 13 is having a tax impact on the left. As we add to that bucket on the left, the impact obviously goes up. If we shorten the terms and the LTFM deferred maintenance, that's gonna constrict those dollars, and those are gonna have to come down, otherwise you're using up all your annual dollars. So as this kinda, whatever we come forward
And
with.
some in that 2.7 column will have to be kicked down the next one, which that makes it even more important that in 3 years. But again, pick on doors and windows as for instance, saying, okay, we understand they have to be done, and they'll be done in the next one. That's where those, come from. And if we have to do, the indoor air quality with the other stuff, saying to get all that done, yeah, it gets there, Again, will it, to me, looking at those things, first if we do 75% of, or 100% of, ASHRAE stuff, it's just simply a matter of, can we get it done in the 2 years? If we can, yes, we are all done, everything, we have that chunk, then that's done. we keep that system there, then in 3 years, we look at, okay, what's the next thing that we do? So,
Yeah, and are you able to calculate that for?
Yeah, it was like around 13 million, so if you take those two numbers, and I'm talking that project cost, the bond amount's a little higher because you got cost of issuance and other stuff, it's
Yeah.
right around $375 on 100,000 when you add in
sure.
the extra issuance.
And do you have a ballpark number on the reduction of the overall? The 16.5 would drop if you compress the schedule, is that what you're saying?
Well, not so much on the columns in the yellow,
Right.
but those,
2.7 would
Yeah, this one,
Yeah.
this one would come down a little bit, cause we just don't. Or we spend more of the 600,000 you have per year
Yeah.
over that 3-year period, yeah, you put all of it toward it, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
but that's a little.
But there's ongoing, I mean, I know
Yeah.
from the health and safety, you're getting staff oftentimes coming out of that bucket and other things, so you're putting pressure on the general fund then.
But basically, if we're using 600,000 as an amount per year, Ethan, so you take 300 per year, 300 times, you know, I guess it'll be 2 years, so you have 600,000, so you'd be down to 2.1 million in long-term facility maintenance dollars to use rather than 2.7, because we shortened it from 5 years to 3 years.
So you drop about 600,000, you're
Yeah.
saying, so you'd be at about 15.9 million available for projects. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Okay.
Matt, if you took 3/5 of the abatement bond and health and safety dollars, dropped it by 2/5, would you most likely get close to the 42 and 190 approx?
On a 3-year,
Yeah, you
on a
could.
3-year, we ran 11 a while back, and it was about $324.
I'm just saying if you want, if the
Yeah.
232 is where you want to end up.
Yeah. Was that a different?
This was a
overall
slightly
tax
different,
base,
yeah,
right?
slightly different, so. Well, I think the need is, like, that's, I don't, I
Right,
think it's
this
less
is-
about the tax impact.
It is, it's more about the need.
Right.
Yeah, that-
Cause if
we're
you're
not,
gonna shoot.
we're not touching educational adequacy
Right.
with,
Yeah, we're not making any educational enhancements
Right.
with this, I mean, other than the learning environment and.
creating a better indoor air quality. I
Yeah.
mean, and a safer pickup, drop off and parking
Yeah.
for students. That's all we're addressing with this.
And I think it's important, I mean, as I was putting slides together, I was pulling them from other slide decks, and I pulled the blast through the last few pictures, Kevin. These were slides that were from the last referendum that people wanna say, well, what might the new school look like, right? Well, there's personal learning breakout spaces, that's not included in Plan B, right? You know, different personal learning breakout, well, you don't have that, right? Keep going, Kevin, blow through these. You know, media centers being different, today in education. This could get you guys excited a little bit, but this is,
I was at Stars Hill High School on Saturday.
yeah, this is pictures from there. That Sartell's
It's
awesome,
beautiful.
right? Science labs, right? This isn't updating your science labs at all, right? And even if we do remodel them, we can remodel them, but they're not going to be like that, right? We had the shop area a little bit, it's still not that, right? So I just think the community needs to understand that too, that Plan B doesn't take care of everything. Plan B doesn't update educational spaces. That's what we're all here for, is about educational spaces, right?
The only thing that actually see is, oh, look, there's parking over
Right.
here and there's green space over there.
You might drive up and say, well, the parking lots look new, there's a little secure entry there, and, yeah, looks
But for
great.
that cost of what you included for a secure entry, you're hardly gonna notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're out.
So I mean, that's gonna look like a
It's gonna
phone
be a
booth.
little bump out over years.
Yeah, a little bump out. It's a little bump out, it's
Yeah.
not,
Very little bump out.
and it's not doing it right, by the way.
Well, no, exactly.
And but I don't know how you rob the general fund and do it right. You see why you haven't done this in the past,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You just,
That green space is not a playground, not a,
I'm not looking at, we don't want it to be a playground.
don't, I know,
We
but
don't want
that's
kids
what we
running
wanna
across the street, so.
make sure that
It's a
that's.
stormwater pond.
It's a stormwater pond, it's.
Right?
Hold on,
Make it a
one
green,
thing I had-
don't make it a play space.
We had thought of or had talked about, or I just told my head, is if you were to build something across to control access over, I'll say, to a physical, sign or a outdoor space, cause that way, okay, if Brian has his Phi Ed class going across, great, now they all meet there, they all can walk across, you're controlling, you don't go across the street, but at what cost to have an overhead, walkway across and then down?
That's,
I mean, it's doable, just like to a field is doable, all these things, cause that way, you're not just having all the kids go out, you meet down here in the gym, from the gym, we now go across, at least we don't have kids crossing the street.
Well, it's
But-
controlled.
That's nice to think.
Well, yeah, I know,
Thing is not everybody's on time.
No, exactly.
Somebody goes, a kid goes to the bathroom, he's late, and so then they take over, 3/4, 7/8 of the kids cross the street under control, and then there's that 1, 2, 3 that come
That are come
flying across, and then the office notifies them that so-and-so's mom's here or something,
Yeah.
throws up, and next thing you know, you got this same
Yeah.
problem that you have now.
Yeah.
None of this addresses that street issue.
Not fully.
Hand that sheet out, the new checklist sheet.
It doesn't get the traffic away from the front entry.
MD has a new checklist.
And it doesn't address those science labs, it doesn't address not only the 7th and 8th grade, but also the high school science labs. It doesn't address that educational space. Some of the indoor air quality, the welding and that kind of stuff gets addressed. But I think, that you think about the maintenance, and you always get told, well, we didn't maintain this stuff. Well, we did maintain this stuff. We had a very limited number of dollars, and each year we dug into and took money out of the general fund to go over and above the 225, 275,000 that we were getting. That amount has come up significantly, because for years, for 25, 30 years before that, we didn't have that. And if you think back, Jeff asked me the other day, he said, when you started here, he said, what grade were these seniors in? Well, this is my 11th year here, so they were in first grade. And in that time frame, we haven't changed out any of these major systems. So whether it's 75% of the indoor air quality, if it's 50% or 100%, we haven't changed any in 10 years. So I look back the 10 years prior to that, and there hadn't been any major systems changed out. And the 10 years prior to that, all the focus was on the elementary, and Trailview was built, and there wasn't any major systems changed out here. So you look at that, and as Jeff mentioned earlier, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, things were at 33 years on average, now they're at 43 years on average. And those systems hadn't been addressed and it's not the maintenance part, it's not changing out a motor, it's not changing out a damper or something, the system is over 40 years old on a 25-year system, 30-year system, they're well past their life expectancy. So trying to set the numbers, we know that those numbers all have to be, if we go 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, and then we hit it again in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, and then we hit it again in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, whatever it turns out to be, it's still going to add up to the big numbers.
Bigger.
Yeah, bigger and more with just cost inflation.
And without state aid.
This handout, fresh from MD, and I think one of the things that they do in this is they do address if the renovation project exceeds 60% of the replacement cost of a school, right? Or if the site, the acreage that you're on is below MD guidelines and standards, which you certainly are, by the way. we've gotta have some rationale on why you're doing this, right? Well, you do, you brought it to the voters, it'll have been 5 times, the voters have said no. So I think you have your rationale, but I wanted to point that out to you, right? That's a little different versus in the past, they've said they might reject you just because of that, so.
What are the chances of this Plan B being rejected by MDE? I mean, we're
This-
not hitting 60%, but
Well,
that's the direction.
But they look at the total
Right.
needs, and they know, because every application you've had is that, part of your reasoning is that your needs exceed 60% replacement cost, so they know, right? This is, there's gotta be a reason why, I think now you have a reason why. I can't tell you, I'm not MDE, they certainly know your situation, right? They did when we did meet with them down at MDE, when we were down at the school board conference, they certainly understand your situation. I would think they'd allow you to use your levy authority to do the things that you feel like you need for the safety of your kids. So that'd be my bet, but I'm not the one that decides.
A lot of silence.
There's nothing sexy about this.
Chip, you guys, what's your thoughts on,
I don't like it. Makes no sense.
The only thing that strikes me as making a lot of sense, or some sense, is the LTFM health and safety HVAC piece. That piece makes some sense to me, that especially if that equipment could be moved or could be reused or repurposed somewhere else
Even
in the
sold,
future. As much as the security or the street bugs me, spending $2.5 million on parking lots almost bugs me more.
the whole thing is
Well,
gross.
I'm just trying to look through the pieces, adding an entrance, adding space to a building. The LTFM other money, that money is being used as it's already designated and intended, so there's really nothing there that affects taxpayers, we can do the things that are being suggested under that category today, and we have done it in the past, and we'll probably do that in the future. That to me is a straightforward line item. When roofs need replacing, you spend the money and replace roofs. If you don't have this year's money, maybe you use some of next year's money, or, that one is fairly neutral to me.
What we have to remember though is, this is the plan if the referendum for a new high school fails. So, if it fails, we're
staying here for a while.
stuck in the building for a while. Whether that's 3 years, 5 years, whatever that is, it's more than a year or 2 or 3. These are kind of the minimum things, even the parking lot, and I agree with you, I think parking, it seems like just wasteful spending. It kind of addresses sort of a little bit of the safety concerns, but it doesn't fully address them. But if it fails, we need to do something. We need to act on for the betterment of the students that are coming, the staff that are coming into this building, onto this campus. And as much as this stinks, it's doing something rather than nothing to address those issues.
And that 2.4 number that we're talking about, it's a big number, but put a number on a life, put a number on an injury, we've had that, this isn't far-fetched when this happens. And, I think any one of us would say, boy, if we can spend that and guarantee it, well, this is, you're right, we can't guarantee, but this is definitely putting things towards it
Taking
to
a
help
step.
lessen, it will lessen the likelihood of it,
Our meeting with the city, we asked, we just put barricades up, and they put barricades up on either sides of this, just block this road off. It greatly reduces that $2.4 million number. You know, and we can extend that parking lot all the way up to the door here, right? That'd be a better use of money. But you know, when you've had a kid hit every year at least that you've been here. Well, could we route the road around the parking lot? Right? So we've asked them, you know, to respond to that in writing, and we'll see what they come back with.
Haven't heard a response yet. Yeah, it's just recent.
Well, I talked with them a couple of months ago already, and we didn't have anything in writing, so when we talked with them, they suggested we submit it in writing, they would take it before the city council. But their initial feeling is that it's too heavily a traveled road to close. And there's only 2 east-west roads, and this is the only one that goes straight through. On this, you go how much further north of town to find one that goes to 47, or go straight south to go to one that goes to 47. And one of the things that caught my attention was when they redid the city street down 1 block south, that got some state aid highway, or state aid, that was a state aid highway. And County Road 6 actually goes from the stoplights over to Main Street up and then over. And so then we suggested to them, if that's county state aid, County Road 6, then maybe that's where the traffic should be going. Well, they don't want that on Main Street. They don't want big trucks on Main Street, so this will come back that they will not allow us to block this off. You know, I suggested even just during the school week from Monday through Friday, we put in concrete barriers, take them down, move them on the weekends, whatever. They didn't think that was plausible, because a lot of this stuff is done Monday through Friday, where a lot of this goods are transported. So you have that, plus then you have, Jeff had mentioned in one of the earlier drawings he had, and you know, the street where it turns there so that it doesn't approach the front of the building, and reroute it around the parking lot. And, you know, again, their comment was, is there's a lot of big trucks that go back and forth through here, so now you've gotta make it 90-degree turns. Never happened. So that's, the chances of that happening, or a discussion, or an engineer that's going to come up with something that's pretty slim. But we should get that back and ready in a month or so.
What would a walkway cost, like a bridge? And could you find it?
Well, how are the kids gonna get up? And then your kids are gonna take the least pass of resistance, and they're gonna just go across the road anyways. You may build a big something.
For a while they'd use it because it'd be a
And then-
novelty, and then throw things off
Maybe.
the traffic underneath.
We try to think of ways to do that.
ADA ramp would be awful, there'd be a spiral, you know, it'd be really expensive. I asked that 8 years ago in these meetings, and at the time they said it was a trunk highway of semis, you'd have to have it so high for everybody to get underneath, and then the ADA portion, you'd have to stretch it around from here to the bus garage.
Or a heck of a twist.
Or to the heck of a twist, right?
And I don't suppose that would fall under parking lot money.
Right. I don't think so. Yeah.
Right, so if you can't.
I don't know if we've asked that question.
Just, 2.4 million would get you ways.
Right, but maybe
We just
not.
can't use that.
Right, the hands are tied.
Yep. So I mean, trying to see where you're at on this. I mean, look at a 3-year option or a 4-year option, reduce the LTFM or down to match that based on the.
And I hope I'm echoing, but I think I am, that it needs to be less than 5. It's gotta be 3, maybe 4 at the max, at least this Plan B, step 1, it has to be that way. We just, everybody in this room, this is just a really hard pill to swallow because it's a terrible plan. And we know it, and it's not sexy, it's not addressing the needs that we want to address. But we have to come to the realization that if this doesn't pass, this is what's best for the kids that are gonna come into the school in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And the staff. It just stinks.
Yeah. Well, 8 or 9 years ago, or 10 years ago, when they put the first referendum out, if they would have known, you'd be 10 years later, and you're still haven't passed anything, you have different decisions, cause you can't see the future, you don't know. That's the hard part here.
But we need to,
But
we
you
need to
also,
swallow this.
you also can't not do anything and cross your fingers. That's how you get where you are today.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess the one thing would be like with the long-term facilities maintenance, we're looking at 600,000 is the difference in numbers, right? Just for 2 years. If we left it at 2.7, let's say we, you could bond it, bond it out there for the 5 years, so we got 2 years in question. We know that if it doesn't pass this year, we're going to we're gonna be here, when are we gonna go out again? A year, 2 years, 3 years?
And again, that 2.7 seems to, in my mind, is the most flexible.
Yeah, that's the number.
I'm not so worried about that number.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at, saying if we leave it at 2.7, our worst case scenario is, let's say in 3 years we're there, we have 600,000 we have to come up with, we might tie some hands for making those payments out of our long-term facilities maintenance dollars. But is it a doable number? Yeah, that's why we have a reserve, why, we'd have some dollars coming in from long-term facilities maintenance, so it wouldn't be the whole 6 anyways, even if we tried to keep it at 50%. But I agree with Ethan, I think, the 2.7 is the most flexible part, but if it's to get the things done,
Well,
I think the math would lead us to say you leave that one at the 5 years, because if a new school doesn't pass in May, we're gonna be here, receiving these dollars, because this school will still be being used even if we pass something in 2 years or 3 years. Because it's gonna take that long to build, and I'm assuming we'd still receive the same age of long-term facilities maintenance dollars
Yeah.
here until the new one is in, right? So,
That's reasonable.
so I think we leave the 16.5 million, so you have the dollars, but I would say we shorten up those terms. Again, and some of this is, I'll say, political, I would say, fine, if I'm voted out, that's it. I care about these students and getting this done, and we know that this is the right thing to do, to get that thing done. And because we know there's other things coming. I'll stand up and defend that position all day long. Saying there's a cost of having school, that's fine. Pay it. So. That's my opinion. Want to speak with these guys?
No, I think they are kind of reiterating, saying the same thing.
So,
Does that give you an idea?
Give us what we need. Keep the LTFM over 5 years,
Yep.
reduce the term of the abatement, and health and safety over 3 years.
yes.
Any, I know Ethan was talking maybe reducing the parking lot down or something, or maybe not.
I don't think so. I mean, we're landlocked tight the way it is, and those are creative looks at what we can do to the parking lot. I think we could probably do even some more, like Scott was saying, around the football field or whatever, but if we're really looking at trying to reduce the chances of people crossing the street, we have to do that.
And I was thinking of that thing for buses, one thing, but even deliveries, making it easier in and out for any type of so maybe that gives us more freedom in the back as far as deliveries, but now that might increase some other costs. I don't know.
And
But-
here's just another thought, from the secure entrance standpoint, could we switch it to our dumpster entrance? And that way we wouldn't need a lift. It's on one plane. And maybe easier to switch where we put dumpsters and have that.
The problem with that is our office is not anywhere close, right?
Right.
So you don't have any supervision of entrance, right? Unless we move the office over there somewhere and try to figure that out. And then if we move the office, then what do we do with the office space,
existing
right?
office, sure.
Now we got remodeling, and remodeling's not covered under any of this funding.
Move the ALC room over to where the current, saying in that third
I was just thinking of ways,
I
like
was
cut
on the
out
same
that
page,
lift,
you
you
know, where
know,
I'm saying, how do we?
and
But then your
make.
funding sources change,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's not available for that, so.
Well, we don't have any funding
But yeah, we're
sources
looking
for
at
secure entrance,
350,000.
period.
That's the number we're talking about.
That's coming out of the general
Yeah.
fund.
The bump out, right?
Cheap little bump out, yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to reduce that general fund hit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, if we have to bump it out by the dumpsters and make there be a little bit of an office there, if we can reduce the hit to the general fund for something like that.
Is your office by the dumpster?
There's the DLC in the high school office.
Our deliveries for food service,
All right.
because the kitchen is right there, would not wanna be coming in here up steps and whatever.
They couldn't still deliver back there?
Well, I don't know if you want big trucks backing in and out of there with a secured entrance.
Kids come.
1,000 kids coming every day. and-
Right. That was just something to throw out there because that fund, that money's coming out of the general fund. So anything we can do to
There's
reduce that impact.
There's a lot of challenges with this.
Yeah.
It's not figured out, it's not perfect.
No, and it's also fraught with a potential additional cost.
It is, there's risk of additional costs. We try to have contingencies in here.
Yeah. From my opinion, the other thought I had for a secure entrance and that is along the south side of the building, have it up for a ramp up to the gym doors. You take over basically that science room right there, and you take that science room and put it down where the high school offices are. Again, we're gonna be paying anyways, renovation, this and that, but you could have a ramp up, hopefully that would be long enough, I don't know, 80, you know, from the corner of the building all the way up. Just a thought. I looked at that overhead many, as all of us have, and trying to figure things.
Yeah, we measured out a ramp, that, you know, it's a 12-to-1 height ratio, right?
Yeah.
So 1 foot up for every 12 feet out.
Yeah.
So just think about how far that ramp's gotta go to get up to the top of your split entry.
Yeah.
It's a long ramp, now it could be a crossback, right?
Yeah.
Right, which, you know, but it's not easy to do and it's big. It's, what, Ethan?
Is the ramp is for walking traffic. The grade's different for walking than driving traffic, right? Would it make sense to build a driving drop-off for handicap entrance that was at a steeper grade and potentially lower cost?
Yeah.
Spitballing.
Raise up the ground, maybe, you know, we take away windows or whatever on,
They're
whatever.
bad anyway.
But maybe, yeah. We don't have to replace them.
Yeah, we don't have to replace them now.
Maybe, I hadn't thought about raising this whole ground up,
Cause the entire purpose of the ramp is the ADA accessibility.
accessibility.
Right.
Well, we're trying to accessibility, and then also, we're trying to create a, controlled environment and entrance too.
Understand, that would be the ideal.
Yeah,
But when you talk about 350,000, it's secure entrance and ADA accessibility.
and AD accessibility, so it'd be a lift to go with it as well.
And I cringe at that wording of secured entrance because $350,000 does not get us a secured
No,
entrance. It
I
gets
think
us
I called it a controlled entrance, is what I
control
called it.
point of the many
It's-
other access points into this building.
That's not ideal. If it was easy, you would have done this,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There's no question you would have done this,
Expensive,
right?
All of those things, yeah, we would have
Right.
done it, and the boards before us would have done it.
Look at-
Yeah.
You've had multiple architects, and we've gone through all the different designs. There was a big addition to put a commons area and along with the rise and run and the secure entrance, and you've had some things looked at, but boy, how much are you gonna add to this building? How much, when do you stop investing in this building? And that's the question you've been asking. Yeah, so do we keep the LTFM for 5 years based on the same amount? Because otherwise, if we are gonna do it over 3, we gotta reduce 600,000 out, and we gotta figure out what's coming out.
I was gonna say, of that's in there, there isn't much to pull out of there.
No, we could pull some windows and we can pull some flooring out.
Yeah.
Which we might have to do when we run into other
Because with-
issues.
With the ADA stuff, we might be
You-
struggling
yeah.
anyways, trying to.
You're right.
Yeah, so.
And
I think it's the best, worst plan we have. It's simple as that.
Yeah.
We'll be arguing this week.
Yeah, I could maybe redirect to Chip, cause, Chip, what do you think? Well, I hate it, I don't like it, right? But if you fast forward to the day after May,
Yeah.
you guys are here,
Is it better than nothing?
Yeah.
right? And you're gonna be here for, well, quite a long time. Is it okay? Is it addressing the right things? I guess is an important question to you two.
Well, yeah, it's a start. I mean, obviously you have to look at the HVAC stuff. I just, I know we talked about communication, we gotta get this out somehow, so we can, put the tax impact on a new and compared to phase 1 of 4, and get this out there to get people, cause I can't imagine anybody in their right mind would vote. If it's the same amount of money, why would you want to put money in this building? But
And truly, it's more.
absolutely,
It's
in the long
more.
run, correct.
And it doesn't, you don't get a better school out of it.
Yeah, you don't get a better school out of it, that's.
No, and that's why we're gonna go back, make this recommendation to the board, at the next board meeting, pass it, with discussion on what do we do with the Plan B, but then the hard push is to circulate the facts of this.
Exactly.
Okay. Any options you wanna give the board? You wanna this be a firm recommendation? Do you want an option of a 4-year or 5-year, or just stick with a 3? I'm just,
If we're gonna go with 3, we take a look at that, instead of 75% on HVAC, that we do 50% now and 50% in 3 years, or something along those lines. Can we tear up a school, can we go through the design phase, tear the school up for 2 years to get 75% in, and then go through another 6 to 8 months worth of design, throw in another amount, or I'm thinking about the kids that start 9th grade, and their grades are based on, and their graduation and their GPA is based on, and they're gonna be in a school that's tore up the whole time, basically. We look at 75% is very aggressive, I think, for 52 days times 2. Because I'm concerned about the amount of time that gets pushed into the school year. The amount of noise, the amount of interruptions, the amount of workers coming and going. Because I don't think you can get that much done in that short of a time frame. I could be wrong, but
we're able to do old buildings, it's what we do. It's a challenge, there's no question it's challenging. You might need to change your schedule a little bit, start early 1 year and end a little late another year or something, and,
Or what happens when we run into something that's semi-catastrophic?
unforeseen circumstances.
Right. I agree with you 100%, but I think this is a good place to start and see what happens, because there's a whole bunch of unknowns with this.
And again, those are our plans, and some of it, even when we're setting up the plans and that, we can, I don't think we do just a 3-year, we look at, setting it up longer, saying, and if we are there, and times are getting short, saying, okay, where is the stopping point? Where is the stopping point? I mean, there has to be, things that make sense. I don't know, but I mean, I don't think they're gonna be going through and, well, I shouldn't say that, because you're gonna be removing everything, because they're not using the exact same spaces. We're not replacing this cubic, area with this cubic area to run the pipe, piping the vents through, if I understand what was said earlier, correct? Or I may be wrong. With the HVAC, I mean, if we've got the ductwork running, let's say, right now, on this middle one, we're not gonna use that exact same space. So we're gonna be in a different thing, so now we're gonna be leaving what's ever there, until the other new stuff is in.
Yeah, we may demo it, we may leave it in place.
Yeah.
All that would be part of the design process
Yeah.
and really looking at what we have up there, right?
Yeah.
Until you get up into the ceiling spaces.
Yeah.
All the old
We're
blueprints.
talking about budgetary numbers
Yeah.
and how to fund them.
Yeah.
Unlike a vote, a referendum vote, we're not necessarily committed to doing everything that we might set out to do. Can we dial that back and say, here's what we need to get to, and if there's unforeseens, I don't wanna run out of money.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
get halfway
right.
into a project and, okay, now we're in trouble.
Right,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you're not committed to the public as far as how many units you replace, you could.
Yeah, see, our thought is if the board approves this on the 27th, and I don't think you formally have to do a review and comment for this. There's parts that you would. There's,
No, you don't have to.
you won't have to. So you won't have to do a formal review and comment. Now, in our review and comment, we just submitted to them. We said we would share Plan B with the Department of Ed so that they know what it is. As well as, you have to have a hearing on your abatement bonds. You have to have a health and safety narrative on the HVAC stuff. Those are two requirements that would have. That
Notice of
would be,
intent in
right?
the paper.
What's that?
Notice of intent in the paper.
Notice of intent in paper. So
Yeah, but that wouldn't have to happen until actually you're going to sell the bonds.
And the notice of intent wouldn't say, we're gonna replace X amount of
No,
your unit.
24
You would
months.
describe what types of things. I think an important piece of this is, and just so everybody is fully aware, is this, in a 3-year plan based on this 13 million, it's considerably more expensive than the 61.9. I think like 100,000 on the review and comment was about $232, and this is running in that 375 realm, so. Is there, to the point of like, is there a back down? Maybe there is a back down somewhere to bring the
Well, I
number
think-
down a little bit.
No, I think the back down
Yeah.
is not in the things that need to get done.
Yeah.
The back down is when we run into unforeseen expenses with this,
Mhm.
Yeah.
do we cut from other things to then pay for what
Okay.
we're running into?
Yeah, so typically when we're putting our design documents together in a renovation, we've got our budget. We're trying to design to that budget, and we're trying our best to pick up unforeseens that you can find on blueprints and on plans and on knowledge of the gentleman you've got here, right? And try your best. And then everything goes competitive bid, right? We'll come back with our bids that come in. And then there's gonna be some change orders because the contractors are gonna find unforeseens. We just need to have a big enough contingency amount that, and hopefully we can manage to that, right? If things come up, they come up, right? We have to do the best we can to manage around those contingencies, as well as on bid day have alternates, you put some cheaper units in. I mean, we're putting in, this is a quality of ventilation design system, right? To be here for a while, right? Not putting in the cheapest of the cheapest. Well, that's something we could look at during the design, right? But there are gonna be things that are gonna come up, and try to guesstimate how much asbestos you're gonna have for a bill. It's not easy to do, right? Until you take certain things off the wall and find out what the mastic is behind it, you really don't know if it's asbestos or not, right? But the sooner we find those things out prior to construction, the better, so we're not stopping construction in a project like this. Yeah, you are, another, I guess another point to that, Ethan, is because it's health and safety and you do have levy authority, so that, let's say it came in $1 million over, right? You do have levy authority to be able to get another $1 million from your taxpayers to pick up the difference of that, right? You have authority to
And
do
then
that.
maybe
Yeah.
adjust the term at that point.
Yeah, we would
To-
just the following
there's
year's levy,
flexibility.
right?
Just looking for flexibility.
Getting a tough pill to swallow.
We're backed into a wall.
Yeah.
We are absolutely backed into a corner.
But it is good to know, we said, yeah, we have the levy authority to health and safety dollars and the air quality stuff, so we can get the project, done that we're looking at. And obviously, and the flexibility with, let's say, the review and comment, like, documents, we're not tied into, you've gotta be done. So to answer the questions, we don't have, whatever, that we're running into the school year by
thus and such days.
Not that it might not happen for you, got a few days, a week or whatever, but if you're that far out going, nope, we're calling it for this year, we're cutting it, you know, capping the system this far done, those are definitely legitimate, you know.
Well, and that's what we have you guys
Yeah.
to help manage that. You know, we need to be back in school at such a date.
Yeah.
That's why we've got the experts doing it.
Yeah. So it's a challenge, cause you gotta sell your bonds, right? You
Yeah.
gotta sell your bonds and start your design, go through your process, right? But then try to design to, you know, to the budget you've established and, you know, your contractor's accountable.